Hi, I'm David Gale, and welcome to Actress Spotlight, where we're building the Canadian star system one podcast at a time. Jean Yoon is busy recording right now, so she couldn't be here recording with me. Today we're talking to one of the most recognizable actors in Canada. Now, you may not know his name, but you definitely know his face. From Hardcore Logo to Death on Supernatural, Julian Richings has been scaring people all over the world for decades. We're very happy to have him interviewed right now. Oh, now you have that nervous face on. Why do you have that nervous face
it's
on?
It's my audition face.
This is your audition. You're wait a second. You use a nervous face for your auditions?
I hate auditions.
Yeah.
I think we all get nervous, don't we?
Do you audition much anymore?
Sure I do, yeah. I'm happy to say I will sometimes be asked to do something,
right,
which is always fantastic. But no, I audition, and I totally understand why I audition. And it's often to do with, even if somebody knows my work, it's about chemistry.
Mm-hmm. And, so you've heard it here. Julian Richings actually auditions for work.
You bet I do.
And what would you say the percentage of the times that you get just asked?
Oh, God. Not enough. How about that?
And could you make that a percentage? No,
No.
No, that's it is nice to be asked, right? And yeah. There have been times when I've been asked to do things, and I know I'm not the first person,
right,
that's been asked to do this thing.
Oh yeah, often.
Sometimes people have dropped out, or they haven't, for whatever reason, they can't do it, or whatever, yeah. and those times have turned out to be some of my best experiences in this industry.
Yeah, and especially somebody like me who tends to come into something as a very specific primary color and mm-hmm. kind of jolt the narrative into a particular direction, and that's it, not for a very long period of time. I will often be in that situation where the previous primary color somehow is not available or has moved on, and I'll come in, but I'm totally happy with that. I'll do it, and sometimes it's an extra gift because no one's expecting you to deliver, in a particular way.
They're not expecting you to deliver?
Well, I guess you're coming as a second choice, and so you're kind of sneaking up behind mm-hmm. and feeling.
Are we going to get it this time?
And actually, this is the reality about this. I'm obviously there's a cancellation today, right? With this podcast.
No, Brian. I mean, Julian. No, not at all. Okay, we've been doing this. We haven't been doing this very long,
right?
But I've done a few interviews, and. Nobody has had over 200 IMDb credits except for you, Julian Richings.
Oh, okay.
That is a lot.
Right.
Do you ever say no?
I do drive my agent a little crazy. I will say no to the most say yes to the most unlikely things. I do say no, and I do have a moral compass, and there are reasons for not doing things, many different reasons. But it strikes me, I'm an actor. I'm not a creative person in the way that I can go home and work on a script, work on a painting, build a piece of furniture, go out into the community in a different capacity. I am an actor, and I improve, and I am challenged and enjoy myself by acting. And you need other people to act. You can't do it by yourself in your garret. You have to be out there. So I see it as a constant learning process.
Yeah. But you can do it by yourself in a garret if you want a very small audience, like a cat.
A mirror?
A mirror, yes.
Yeah.
I've been told not to act in front of a mirror. Perhaps that's wrong.
Yeah.
So you were born in Oxford.
Yep.
Most people go to Oxford. You come from Oxford.
Correct.
Where did you go to school?
I went to a grammar school, regular state grammar school. Oxford is a funny city. Everybody thinks of Oxford, the university. Mm-hmm. It's also an industrial town. There's a car factory. We used to make mini miners. And Austin Morris, Healers, like a whole bunch of different cars.
Little cars.
Well, little by North American standards, but small, efficient cars, the Morris Oxford being one of them. And so it's a town-gown split kind of a place. I grew up on the town
Say that
side.
again?
A town-gown split.
Town-gown.
Yeah.
So there's the town side?
And the gown.
Presumably,
there's a whole
the
movie about this, and I can't think what it's called now.
And so the gown people are the people who are going to Oxford.
Yes,
et cetera, yeah.
And then the other side of the track is the townies who belong to the car factory and have a bit of a chip on their shoulder about where their station is in life.
Which side were you from?
I was from the wrong side of the tracks.
Is there an accent difference? Accent difference?
Well, I mean, anybody that attends Oxford University does not belong to that community, that area, so they're not, they have a whole range of accents, but generally they're what's the word? They're highly mobile, highly educated, so they come from a very specific demographic within society. The local accent in Oxford is sort of speaking like this. It's got a very rural, like if I was speaking to you in my Oxford accent, I'd be speaking like this. Sort of like a London accent, but with a country thing on top of it.
And that's how you grew up talking?
Yeah. And in fact, my mum realised that actually I wanted to be a newsreader when I grew up. That was what I saw the television and thought, that would be a great thing to do. She said, well, if you're going to be a newsreader, you probably should get some elocution lessons. So I went to somebody to learn how to speak proper.
Really?
Yeah.
At what age?
About 9 or 10, because I had a very, very thick accent, very rural accent.
And did your friends make fun of you for trying to sound posh?
I kept it quiet.
Aha. Smart.
Yes. Yeah. So I would speak very well, for half an hour and then go out back in the street and do stuff.
It was a real broad accent.
Yeah, I mean, no more broad than anybody else, but it was pronounced, and it involved a lot of dropping of consonants.
Mm-hmm. So, and how did you? Well, first of all, you're known for playing these intense parts,
right?
These sometimes evil, sometimes deadly parts. What was your childhood like? Was it horrific? Happy, of course. It makes for a good,
Happy childhood.
Yeah.
One of 3 boys, middle child. Mm-hmm. So I think right in there is a key to an actor. I know a lot of other actors who are middle children and have a sense of not quite knowing who they are or not quite having the same identity that the eldest and the youngest have. And I benefited from having an older brother who had a very peculiar talent. He used to build things. He used to build environments in our backyard. He would go to the local circus every time it came round in the fall and reproduce the artwork on the front of the circus trucks and build a ring inside our garden shed and build fun houses and things like that. So he just was fascinated by design. We had no word for it. He was just odd, and he had this odd ability. And I would be the guy that would come in and be the ringmaster, be the spook in the haunted house, and we would create these environments. My parents, to their credit, realized that he had a very peculiar talent, wasn't necessarily excelling in school, so they sent him to a youth club. Now, in England at the time, there was no theatre in mainstream curriculum. So he went to this youth club where they put on plays instead of playing ping pong or doing the other kind of things that youth clubs did at the time. And that was the whole purpose, to bring people together, often who were cares of the state or were on probation, or there was a sort of a community aspect to this. Everybody wanted to be actors. My brother was delighted to build the environments and the sets. So I went along and I helped him build all this scenery and stuff. And as I got old enough to become a member of this youth club, I didn't want to do what my older brother did, and I was more socially forward, and so I acted. And then my younger brother came along, and he became a lighting designer, which just, it boggles my mind that had my parents not had the foresight to do that and realize that uniqueness of my brother at that age, you know, all three of us, none of us would be in this profession.
And are your brothers working in that field now?
Yeah, my older brother is actually now in youth work. He's an Arts Council officer in Wolverhampton, England. And my younger brother is an international lighting designer, nominated for a Tony.
Amazing.
Yeah, so I'm very proud of them.
And did this lead you to study theater in university?
Yeah, in university, I had no idea that I would end up working as an actor. But I loved acting, and I loved being part of this community that put on plays. So I thought, well, I'm not going to go to drama school because everybody takes it way too seriously. And it was England in the 70s when the traditional theatre was changing. It was going from the weekly repertory theatre system to community theatres. There was a balance in creativity. There was a shift of balance, I should say. So it seemed to me like the drama schools were a little bit hoity-toity, class consciousness again. Mm-hmm. So I went to
town. You're a towner.
Townie. And so I went to a university. I went to Exeter University to the drama department. I studied English and drama, thinking that, well, I can still do the subject that I love. I can keep performing, but it's a sort of a security where I can get a degree and maybe end up teaching or something, whatever, putting off that decision. But as I went to university, I was exposed to these incredible influences.
Positive?
Absolutely positive. It was a wonderful theatre department, and I just thought, well, this is it. And also at the university there was a resident theatre company that was an outgrowth of former members of the university, and we toured in around Somerset and Devon and community halls, seniors' homes, those kind of things.
Once you graduated from the university?
Once I graduated,
So
yes.
What kind of parts were you getting in university?
In university, well, we would do classic. We'd do the Bacchae, and I'd be the one that played Cadmus, the older guy. Julian, you play the older fella. You play the unusual chap.
Because you always looked older?
Well, I suppose I don't know. I had something that was a little left of mainstream, maybe.
It sounds like you've been taking this something a little left than mainstream and turned it into a career.
Well, not deliberately, but I think it just happens. I think it's a combination of factors. Yeah.
Yeah. So you eventually came to Canada.
I did.
How did that happen?
So I worked in a community theatre, a theatre and education group, which the experiences were wonderful, and these were very much a continuation of what I'd done in the youth theatre. Theatre as a social purpose. It was a wonderful thing. But I also there was a part of me that really was fascinated by the training that I'd done at Exeter, and that was steeped in the methodology of the East and of Jerzy Grotowski, Antonin Artaud, a lot of the alternate figures in theatre in the 60s, 70s. So I joined a theatre company called Triple Action Theatre, and we toured internationally with an adaptation of James Joyce's Ulysses. And that was a very imagistic, very specific show that was really the arts circuit. It didn't belong in a residency in a small town in England. It needed to tour and get out there. And that's what brought me across the Atlantic. We toured to Chicago, New York, and Toronto, and I fell in love with Toronto.
Did people like the plays?
Yeah, it was very well received. Yeah. Yes, it was. It was a very severe imagistic adaptation. I mean, how do you condense the novel of Ulysses into, an hour and a half theatre experience with great difficulty? Mm-hmm. But it was an intense and wonderful ride for us as performers and for the audience too.
And it brought you to Toronto.
Yes, and because it was a theatre show, we didn't get put up in hotels. We got, we slept on people's couches. We relied on the friendship of Toronto performers who said, "Yeah, I've got a space in my apartment." And so I was very fortunate. I got put up in a place, a college in Bathurst, and I met this extraordinary group of people in a house. I loved them all. They became my friends. And then as soon as we left the city and continued on our gig, I just struggled to come back and visit them. And I did that over a period of time. And then I met my wife, who is from Toronto. And
so it was a woman.
Yeah, I guess. A woman and a city and a country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. So you come from, it sounds like, social relevancy and consciousness to the environment and the world. And I mean, this was a big part of what you were, right?
Yeah.
Then you come to Canada and you start getting involved in TV and film with these very extreme aspects of the world, like, you know, fantasy and supernatural. And
yeah.
How did that work for you?
It was a slow evolution, really. I mean, I started off the way that I traveled here, and that was in the theatre. I was very fortunate. I immediately became a member of the Poor Alex group, which was a real social catalyst in Toronto in the 80s. There was Theatre Columbus, Dean Gilmore, Mimi Gilmore, Crow's Theatre were all based there. And I was... And then up above us, there was this guy writing a novel. His name was Michael Ondaatje, and he was writing Skin of the Lion. You know, it was there was a sense of excitement, exploration. So my journey felt like it was appropriate. My place in this community felt right. I felt that everybody around me was searching and was willing to take risks and was willing to try things, but was also open to a mishmash of different backgrounds and styles, clown, Buffon, all sorts of styles that weren't traditional British styles. Mm-hmm. There was a sense of what's Canada's voice? What is a Canadian voice?
Right.
There was who are we?
Diverse.
And it completely matched my questioning,
right.
too. And ironically, of course, I represented the colonial voice in this, because as soon as I opened my mouth, the accent that came out was the colonial accent that all of us, me included, was trying to get away from.
Hey, did you ever work on trying to get a Canadian accent?
I mean, yes, I did, and I sometimes do. It feels a little fake. And, you know, as all actors, you have to embrace who you are. Yes, you have to adapt and change and shift, but you can't deny yourself. And I'm so formed as a British performer and an accented performer physically and vocally that it's a little bit hard to go completely counter to that.
Right. Now, it sounds like, I mean, looking at your credits, I think I talked about this a little bit before, your credits in the TV and film world compared to your work in the theater. Were you ever torn with what was going on screen? Because you played some in the horror genre, etc.
No. In fact, I've played some monsters. And I've, again, going back to my experience with my brothers, I've enjoyed working with technicians who make actors look really good. And I've danced the dance with special effects guys, sat there in their chair for 4 hours and been amazed by what they can do and how they can help me as an actor. And I've enjoyed that immensely. And the fact that an actor has to rely on lighting, on camera work, hitting your mark, special effects guys, and that's always appealed to me. So I have no problem that way. And on a sort of a spiritual level too, the horror genre is the traditional world turned upside down. It's the subconscious. It's the things of our nightmares. It's actually a very healthy expression of what we fear most. And it's a topsy-turvy world in which a lot of our traditional models are challenged. The nice, straight, white couple go to the woods for a day and suddenly all hell breaks loose. It's a challenge to our normal expectations of life.
Like kids' fairy tales being
it's
cooked
very
in a pot
much,
or eaten by a wolf or
Absolutely.
a giant attacks you or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, Guillermo del Toro is an example of he tells modern fairy tales.
Yeah, have you worked with him?
I have, yes. Yeah, I actually worked on his early movie Mimic.
Oh yes, of course.
Which was set in well, it was Toronto doubling as New York. Back in the day when we used to always double as Chicago or New York. And we can talk for hours about that.
Wear a Yankee hat.
But yeah.
And what did you do you played in Mimic?
I was a sewage worker.
Sewage worker.
Yes, I was up to my chest in water. I think it was brown water, but I think it was clean. And it wasn't very pleasant, but I remember how charming this director was, who I had no idea who he was at the time. And in fact, he's a very loyal director and will always try and rehire people that he's worked with, which always impresses me.
Yeah, he set himself up in this area, in the Ontario area.
Well, another honorary Canadian, like George Romero too, who sadly is no longer with us, but I always think of as an honorary Canadian.
And you worked with him as well?
Yep.
Yeah.
And in the same genre,
right,
in the horror
Of
genre.
course. So you don't mind sitting on the chair for 4 hours while they make you up? You said that.
No, I don't. It's a challenge. It's fascinating to sit there and listen to guys obsess about the effect of someone getting his thumb shot off in Taxi Driver and going into minutiae of detail about it. It's great. I mean, as actors, we sit around and, talk about scenes and about, all kinds of things. So for me, it kind of grounded it in a specific. I think as actors, we tend to spiral off into the unknown because it is such an ephemeral art at times.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the parts that frightened you?
Frightened me?
Yeah. Where you look back in the mirror.
You mean in terms of the subject matter, or
yes, or when you finally see the finished product, you watch it and you think. Can you separate yourself ever from it?
It's difficult to. I remember I watched. There was quite a wonderful movie of the week called Time Travelers, or Time Shifters. The title varied. It shifted itself a couple of times, but I think it ended up being called Time Shifters. And in it, I played a very distinctive man in a bowler hat that appeared at a series of catastrophes throughout the world. And there was CC footage of this guy being at the Hindenburg disaster and in a modern disaster, and people started to put two and two together and say, wait a minute, who is that guy, and why is he spanning decades of time looking exactly the same, being present at all these disasters? And so the premise of the story is that I'm a traveler from the future coming back as a disaster tourist, being present at disasters. It's a very scary concept, very true, very human, and it actually unsettled people deeply. A comic example of that is that I was actually sitting on a plane soon after the movie had been released, and in the movie, of course, I'm on the plane, and the plane goes up in smoke. I mean, it's not very funny if you're sitting on the plane and you're sitting across the guy that is playing the disaster tourist. So that happened a couple of times.
A couple of times.
Yes, yeah. And it resolved itself with a lot of laughter. But that's a very unsettling thing, and it caught a nerve. And I think it's the only show that my daughter has watched and just burst into tears. She's seen all kinds of odd things happen to me, and for me to do things that are a little deviant from her perspective. But no, this one was really
creeped her out.
Yeah.
So you've done a lot of films. I mean, you do. I mean, I just randomly I just looked at you did 5 films in '97.
Right.
5 films in 2001. This is not counting the films you did in between.
Yeah.
5 films alone in 2007. 7 films in 2008.
Yeah. I think the reason for that, it sounds like a lot when you do the numbers. Mm-hmm. But, the kind of parts that I play, I will be in a film for, let's say, 5 days. and then I'm somewhere else. Again, it goes back to what I was saying about me offering a primary color to a play, or I should say a film, and not necessarily carrying the weight of the narrative. And so I don't have to be around for 3 months of shooting. I will come in and go out again. Sometimes I will be doing 2 films at the same time. And also I do a lot of indie film.
Right.
Which I enjoy a lot. Very DIY, very hands-on, and quick.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you get a series, a television series, and you've done many television series, when they go, is it a bit of a relief for you to be able to develop the role more?
Absolutely.
What's that like for you?
Yeah. I mean, the other man's grass is always greener. I'm very happy to be who I am, and I have the luxury of doing a lot of work in different areas and different aspects. But of course, I always think how wonderful it would be to carry the weight of a film's narrative. And I look at people and think, that would be fun, going from A to B right through to Z at the end of the film. It doesn't tend to happen to me. It does occasionally, but yeah, the other man's grass is always green.
I know what you're talking about. I was doing a fringe show and getting press from this fringe show, right? That when you know what it's like to do a fringe show, maybe you might make some money, maybe not. And a friend of mine who was very busy in the doing animation voices, very busy, but quietly, right? You don't get a lot of light shine on you. Well, you're in a dark room, but he was. You could see that he was feeling a little bit like I was living the life, doing this show and getting the press, and yet, harder to pay the rent.
Yeah, absolutely.
So talk about some of your favorite television series where you got to really get to the meat of the matter with some characters.
Television series, I had a blast doing Once a Thief, which was a fun, campy show that I guess you've probably got it in front of you. Was it the 90s? It was mid-90s?
It was 97, 98?
97, 98. Yeah. Jennifer Dale was the lead. Nicholas
Campbell?
No, another Vancouver actor. Oh, dear. Sorry, Nick, I can't remember your last name. I'll get in trouble.
That's okay.
But anyway, a terrific cast, a very campy sensibility. I played one of the cleaners, which was an assassin, a couple of assassins. So Greg Kramer, who sadly is no longer with us, was my partner in crime and in life in that show. And it was great fun. And there was the standing joke was that we were never allowed to do a profile. If we did a profile shot, one of us had to be in profile and one of us had to be facing forward because our 2 noses were so big that
they wouldn't fit the screen.
Between us, basically, it was a shot about 2 noses. I think Greg is one of the few other actors that I've ever worked with that has a bigger schnoz than I do.
Had,
yes. Sorry, Greg.
Yeah. Wow. And you did certainly a season of that for sure.
Yeah, and it was a lot of fun. And it was so off the wall that it didn't get renewed, much to everybody's disappointment.
And what about, your first big series, I guess, War of the Worlds?
War of the Worlds, yeah.
What was that like? That was a lot.
Well, it was a big experience for me. That was the first time I'd ever done a recurring character on television. And it was in the days when, I was mainly a theatre actor.
Right.
And so this was an extraordinary leap from doing theatre and being a background performer in Night Heat to being a regular on these shows.
Oh, you did BG in Night Heat?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Like regular?
And Adderley, I used to do.
Oh, Adderley, of course.
Adderley, because it supplemented my theatre income in the 80s, and especially when kids came along, and, you had to. So, you mentioned what's it like doing all these jobs. Well, you just do them out of necessity, but also there's a drive that keeps you doing it. Yeah. And I love it.
There's some more here. You did quite a few episodes of Patriot.
Oh, yeah. That's actually been a big changer for me. So Patriot is it was shot as a pilot in Montreal about 3 years ago, and it was one of those things where Amazon were experimenting with their audience, and I think they commissioned 8 pilots, and they got their viewing audience to vote on 3 that should go through to series. Patriot was one of those. So I heard the news and I thought, fantastic, I'm going to be shooting in Montreal and we'll be doing this quite wonderful black comedy. And then I found out that Steve Conrad, who is the showrunner, writer, genius behind the thing, wanted to shoot it in Chicago, his hometown. So I thought, okay, well, that's it then. I'll wave goodbye to that, fair enough. Anyway, he did the paperwork for me so that I could go down to Chicago and shoot. It's the first time I'd ever worked in the States. I mean, I've been very much a Canadian working in Canada, with an evolving Canadian sensibility. So for me, that was a big door that suddenly opened to the US, and it meant that I started to do more shows down there. Now, I'm not going down there thinking, one day I'll get my green card, one day I'll get my citizenship. I'm very fortunate in that it's just, what it's done for me is it's just cast the net a little bit wider.
Right.
But Toronto is still very much home.
And for those things, are they coming to you for those parts?
Well, no. But the beauty of our current age is that we can self-tape.
Right.
And if something's shooting in Atlanta, Georgia, or in Los Angeles, you put yourself on tape and you say goodbye to it, and you never know. Maybe you'll hear back about it.
So, how often have you gotten things from self-tapes? I think people really need to know that.
Oh, okay. What's the percentage? I guess I have to say right up front, I feel more comfortable with self-tapes now because I have control. And I'm not nervous. I think any audition process makes one nervous. It doesn't matter, how confident you are as a performer or competent. You look around the dressing, the waiting room, and you see all your friends or the other guys that are up for the part, and you go, well, it's theirs. You suddenly feel that sort of terrible sense. Anyway, that you're spared that with a self-tape. And to answer your question, I guess I have a pretty good success rate. I don't know what it would be. Maybe I might get 2 out of 10. Is that good? You probably know better than I do.
2 out of 10. People say 1 out of 10. They used to say 1 out of 10. I think they started saying 1 out of 15. So the fact that you're getting 2 out of 10 is pretty darn good.
That's off the top of my head. Yeah. So it might more realistically be 1 out of 10. I don't know. But it's certainly... It's more actor-friendly as far as I'm concerned.
I agree. Not only are all your friends out there and your competition, you're also walking into a room with people who could potentially hire you or not.
Yes.
So it's a job interview every time we go to audition. And they hold the power of whether you're going to get this job or not.
Yeah. I also find that it's such an unnatural thing to audition. You generally go in, you've got 3 pages. Often it's broken into 4 scenes, and you're expected to know them, know the responses of the other actor without ever having met the other actor, and also sort of merge them together in one take, which, of course, you never do on a set. And so it really is difficult. At least with the self-tape, you can overcome that a little bit. I tend to think, okay, so if there's a section of this scene that I could shoot in one take, why don't I shoot that in one take, cut, go to the next part of the scene? Yeah. And so I have control over how much I feel that I'm able to do. Yeah,
that's something that so often we don't feel we have as actors, which is control.
Control, and this is an innate in the performer, permission. Mm-hmm. I feel, going back to the middle child thing, I feel that acting, it's permission to do things, permission to say rude words or to behave in a particular manner. And I think the more we can empower ourselves and to give ourselves control, the better it is.
Yeah. It's surprising how many people actually are complaining about self-tapes.
Okay.
I think people who don't do them that often find them daunting.
Right.
So it's a good reminder to ourselves that it actually is more beneficial for us to not have those nerves and to be able to have control over what we're sending in and until we get it right,
Right.
Yeah.
I'm a technophobe, and I rely on my wife to hold. But it's done on a cell phone. I mean, she holds the cell phone and then edits from there, and then just puts it down. So I can understand if people have to go into a studio and pay in order to get the self-tape done. I understand their frustration with that, but I'm fortunate that I have a partner who is able to assist me with that process.
Wow. Where can we get one of those? Do you have access to that? So do you have you been to fan expos much?
Yes, a lot. I've done a lot of conventions in the last, I guess, about 5 years. So I do a show called Supernatural, which has a massive fan base. I didn't know anything about the convention circuit. And in fact, the AD came up to me at the second time I appeared on Supernatural, came up to me and said, with this scene, I think you're going to start doing conventions. And I looked at him and I went, what? What does that mean? And he said it in such a way that I should be like eternally grateful for this, and I couldn't understand what he was talking about.
And you played Death on Supernatural.
I played Death. Yes. I played the Grim Reaper. Mm-hmm. And so it's an iconic role. I didn't play it in many episodes. I think I appeared in maybe 5 or 6 episodes between season 5 and season 10. But because I have such a status, there is God and there is Death in this universe, and Death has a series of underlings, reapers, that go around the world on his behalf, reaping people. Right. But they all report back to Death. So Death is mentioned a lot. So my status is huge within the show in those 5 seasons, even though my appearances are very limited. So anyway, what's happened is over the years, a convention circuit has evolved with the A-list players that are on the show, and they people the events with the B-listers and the C-listers and the Julian Richingses of the world that will just go, sure, I'll come and appear, and I'll make a fool of myself doing karaoke, and I'll dance around with, they're fabulous. So,
there's karaoke. Yeah. Let's talk us through this now. Talk us through what goes down at a fan expo.
Well, first of all, so you've obviously seen the movie Galaxy Quest.
I have.
Which I love.
Fantastic.
And there's the Alan Rickman character that goes, I played Richard III once. And I sort of had that that approach, thinking, well, I'm a proper actor. I don't do this. And I went, and the first one was in Toronto, actually, by the airport. And I went, and there was like 3,000 people there. And I was just blown away at the family spirit, the idea that people from all over the world had come to see this show that they'd followed and loved and felt part of the community. With social media, they feel involved. They give their feedback to the producers, to the writers. They make it very well known what characters they like and they don't like. And the outreach to fans is conventions. And these conventions with Supernatural are not just sitting there and signing an autograph and taking money. These are 3-day events that start on a Friday in a hotel so that people can come from all over the world, share the hotel rooms, and get to meet each other, having not seen each other for about a year. They're a big social occasion. And then on the Friday, there's a band that's comprised of former Supernatural actors that glue the whole event together. There's a karaoke. There are meet and greets. There are sleepovers where people. There are all kinds of offshoots.
Sleepovers with you?
Not with me, but a couple of the characters. It's kind of appropriate that they without going into too much detail here, it's appropriate to their characters, and there's kind of an empowered girl power thing about taking ownership of being a young woman. And so there are kind of appropriate events that you can sign up to, and are all very carefully monitored, and they're wonderful.
So when you come to these events, do they give you a chair to sit somewhere? Are you mingling with your fans?
They're very carefully organized, so that they're scheduled so that, Julian, you're signing for an hour, and then you'll go and do a panel discussion. Then you'll go to the Great Hall and you'll do a Q&A with 2,000 people for an hour, and then you'll do meet and greets, and then they do a speed dating thing where everybody in the show that all the guests, say 7 different members of the cast, would do speed dating, going around the tables and having 5 minutes each.
With the fans.
With the fans.
Who win the lucky chance
Yeah,
to
yes,
sign up.
yeah. It's a fabulous occasion.
And have there been times, can you explain times where things get out of hand?
No, because there's such a great respect and a control. I mean, they're very carefully monitored. You have to also understand the fan base is very respectful. And I find this, I like as an actor, I guess if you're Brad Pitt or you're somebody that is so recognizable that people are going to drop their groceries and run over and scream, I guess that's different. But
they don't run over and scream when they see you.
No, they run away. They run in the opposite direction, actually. But the idea of recognition, I think people are generally very respectful. And there's a democratizing in these conventions where everybody's literally on the same level. And so fans get up and sing a song in karaoke, and I'm in the background dancing because I can't sing that song, but I'll dance in the background and make a fool of myself. I'm not putting on any airs and graces, and it's the same with everybody else in the show. So if anybody's got their party piece that they'd love to sing, they'll get up and sing it. So
what's your party piece?
Dancing.
So you don't sing?
I sing terrible songs like Wandering Star. You know, Lee Marvin sang, I was born under a wandering star. Songs for people that can't really sing.
Right. And they pay you for this, yes?
Yeah, there's a sort of like an honorarium. I mean, it's a bit of it. It's gone through many phases of being the Wild West, and no rules, nothing, to being quite carefully monitored and above board.
And so talk about how much social media has to do with your career at this point.
Well, I'm aware of it. As I said earlier, I'm a technophobe, so I don't do it willingly. I have a Twitter account, and I'll do stuff on there. Really, as an
Instagram?
And Instagram, yeah, as an obligation to the Supernatural fan base, in that you're kind of expected to. I don't have producers wagging their fingers and telling me that I should, but I actually feel that people want to know how I'm doing. People want to know about my daughter. People want to know intimate details without being invasive. They genuinely feel that they know me, and they want to follow my career as an actor.
How much do you think having lots of social media followers goes into the decision about casting you in things?
I think if I had a following of 4 million, it would. I don't think it makes any difference at the moment. No.
Tens of thousands doesn't count so much?
I don't think it does, and it depends how you use them. I just take a photograph of myself or my family, and I post it. And I feel that that's an extension of who I am, and it's me keeping a diary of what I do. It's not a big self-promotion vehicle. If I see a funny article in the paper, I might retweet it, but that's about it. Mm. I'm not really aware of a brand, and I'm not promoting a brand. I think that when you get into that phase of a career, that's a whole different thing.
So you don't think that that what you bring to a project is your brand? You talk about that extreme color. You talk about that broad.
Yeah,
color.
It just hasn't been defined. I mean, it's not like it's not. Let's use Brad Pitt as an example, or a particular person that brings in X amount of box office, or will get a film greenlit. I won't do that. Mm-hmm.
But you'll add some green color if you need to.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you have done very juicy in Doom Patrol this Strombenführer von Fuchs, which was so much fun. So much fun. Was it fun to play?
It was wonderful. And puppets made of me.
And puppets, yes.
Yeah.
The marionettes.
That
was fantastic. So talk about Doom Patrol. Was it?
So Doom Patrol is a DC Comics version of X-Men. Really. They both came out at the same time, and I think there was a big rivalry at the time. And somehow X-Men won out and became the comic of choice. And so really, Doom Patrol was ditched. And it's only recently that it's been dragged out and given another look and sort of reinvented with the spirit of the time that it was written. It was a little more subversive, a little odder than X-Men, but it's very similar in that the person in charge of a group of dysfunctional, oddball superheroes is a man in a wheelchair. It's a very similar dynamic, except more extreme. And the humor is more scatological and risque.
Yeah. I believe there was a whole universe inside of a butt of a donkey. So
yes,
I know what you're talking about. But for you to play that, I mean, how juicy and how broad and how much fun was that? I mean,
fabulous.
Did you have a hard time not breaking up?
Not with that one, no. Actually, no, because I think part of it is you have to play it dead straight.
Right.
And if the wit and the laughter is in the audience's response. If there's any twinkle in your eye, the humor's not there. You can't look like you're in control of it.
Yeah.
So actually, that's really a serious, intense role.
What was your favorite non-horror role that you can remember?
Oh, Hardcore Logo. I think.
Yeah.
Classic. I think Bruce McDonald's film for so many reasons.
Mm-hmm. What are they?
A friend of mine who I'd evolved a relationship over the years. He first edited a show called Top of His Head by Peter Mettler with Jane Seabury singing vocals throughout the whole thing. Wonderful film starring Stephen Wilmette in like 86, 87, something like that. So I'd known Bruce since then as an editor. And then he became a filmmaker, and then he assembled this mockumentary before mockumentaries were popular, and before The Office. I think the only previous mockumentary was Spinal Tap, and this was a kind of an homage to Spinal Tap, and Bruce wanted it to be Spinal Tap's nasty little cousin. And I think he succeeded brilliantly. And we actually, I think that we released it to the Berlin Film Festival as a documentary, and it was accepted as a documentary.
Oh, they had no idea.
Because for the time it really was convincing.
Really.
So I loved it. I loved working with that cast, and just in that manner, it was great.
And then you got to revisit it as well.
I did. It was harder revisiting. We tried many times in different forms. Quentin Tarantino at one point was going to do a TV series because he really liked it, was a big fan of the thing. But then he got into the torture genre with Hostel and those kind of things. So
torture porn.
Oh, yeah. I'm glad I haven't actually managed to be in. Well, maybe a little bit. We'll move right on. Anyway, it took a while until we did part 2. I think it was a great film. The problem with it is it's called Hardcore Logo Part 2. So everybody goes to it expecting it to be, the same plus. In fact, it's a very introspective film by Bruce McDonald, the filmmaker. It's wonderful, but it's really about him and about his feelings about making a rock movie.
Right.
So I think a lot of people, it didn't get the reception that the first one did.
Your favorite horror role, do you think?
I don't know. Oh, I loved being in Stephen King's Kingdom Hospital. That was a series shot in Vancouver. And I played Otto, the near-blind security guard. And it was a lot of fun, very off-kilter. It was based on Lars von Trier's The Kingdom. He did a TV series in Denmark. I think it's what actually brought him to the public attention. Stephen King had seen it, loved it, and was out jogging the day after that he'd watched this series and got hit by a driver and left for dead on the side of a road. And ended up in hospital in a coma with the images of Kingdom Hospital in his head. So when he recovered, he took all the Stephen King, the Lars von Trier copies away, bought them, and rewrote the show with an artist involved being hit by a van and left for dead on the side of the road. So Stephen King was really personally invested in this show and took it to a different place. Unfortunately, it was before primetime streaming like The Sopranos, and it was ABC, I think, where, you know, we'd see 3 minutes of action and then commercial and then another 2 minutes of action and another commercial. And it really needed the broad sweep of pay TV or HBO, whatever.
Ahead of its time.
Ahead of it. Well, yes, I think other shows like it were being created at that time, but it was the wrong medium for it. And so it kind of died a death.
Favorite comedy?
That I've been in?
Yeah.
Gosh, I don't know.
I know it's hard when you're playing death a lot.
I do. I don't play it. Although, you know, I mean, you see, I would like to say that I think that Kingdom Hospital was very, very funny. I think that Patriot, which is a very black comedy, is very, very funny. I play
Doom
a very
Patrol?
And Doom Patrol. I play a very dark character often, but I see the humor in it. Supernatural Death, the character that I play, the Grim Reaper, actually is charming, amusing, has a wry sense of humor, and loves junk food. So, you know, what's there not to like about that?
Sure.
So I like playing against the expectation. So it's hard to say, yeah, there's something that's out and out goofy and funny.
Now, you've talked about being approached on the plane.
Yes.
And freaking some people out. Do you have other experiences where people came up to you and recognized you but freaked out? Or
Oh, frequently.
Frequently. What do you get mostly? What do they
Well,
say?
mostly because of Supernatural's reach, it's Supernatural fans. And I'll often be with my wife and she'll nudge me and she'll go, just go and say hello, see if they want a selfie or something. Because people are very respectful, but, you know, incapacitated. And you can see them in the corner, like if you're at the grocery store or something. Because, I play this iconic character. So it's not like Julian Richings, the actor, stepped in the room. It's like death from the show. Like the ultimate power has stepped in the room. So it is a significant event. So I'll often go and chat. But there have been some very funny things. There was an incident in Dallas where I was doing a convention and we were in the hotel that was above the convention center. Normally we're in hotels completely separate. Anyway, I was on a high floor and I came down towards the convention center, and a guy got on with me and we were both in the elevator and I had a minder right next to me, and then we went down towards the convention center. Doors open and a bunch of fans come together, see me in the elevator, go to walk on and go, ah, scream, run in the other direction. And then the doors close. And the best thing of all, of course, is the reaction of the other guy who had got on the other floor looking at me thinking, what the hell is up with this guy?
What have I got myself into?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so I get a few things like that. But by and by, it's fun. It's
People
fun.
are nice.
Yeah, very nice.
That's amazing. Well, you are very nice. And I'm afraid if you are death, you're charming me to death, that's for sure. Very charming. And it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Likewise. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And continue doing what you're doing, because you're making us very proud.
Well, thank you. And I'm a proud ACTRA member, and I'm proud to be here too. So thank you.
We didn't prompt him to say that. No. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
What an intelligent interview. That was Julian Richings. I learned a lot about his life and what it's like to be walking around with people thinking that you're death. Thanks for listening. ACTRA Spotlight is produced by Cass Enright and recorded in ACTRA's Gordon Pinson studio. You can get Spotlight on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to like us and share us, and keep watching Canadian, and watch out for death.